My monocles appraise items in shops, yes, but they also appraise citizens, adventurers, and some versions can even appraise monsters. When scanning beings like this, it can show proficiency of skills and abilities they possess. This appraisal can be blocked by other items, but most adventurers don't really bother to block such items. So it's a good idea to make a habit of scanning potential enemies with this while out in the world adventuring, hunting treasure, or slaying monsters. Wow, Gray says, obviously impressed. How much to keep it? The basic version over there is 3 silver pieces, the shopkeeper answers. Gray scans the shop through the monocle, and his eyes light up several times as he finds interesting weapons that have both green and yellow glow. What about this axe? He asks the merchant excitedly. Well, you are a bard, right? The shopkeeper inquires. Yes, that's right, Graelic answers. So what is your specialty? The merchant asks him. I'm going for vocal specialization, Gray responds. Okay, well, for that specialization, a one-handed slashing or piercing weapon generally works far better. Okay, Gray replies with a disappointed tone. After a while, he comes to a beautiful weapon that seems something between a long dagger and a short sword. The blade is long, narrow, and relatively thin, with a shiny silver luster. The handle is wrapped in a soft yet sturdy-looking leather. It feels comfortable as he grips it. Then he swings the weapon side to side. Next, he circles it down into the left of his body, then down into the right. It feels so natural and effortless. He knows it is exactly what he's after. It also has 3 stat enchantments. He looks a little more closely at the hilt and realizes that the pommel is inlaid with a small light blue stone inside of a silver circle, and the circle has small musical notations engraved in it. I'll definitely be taking this, Gray exclaims with a huge grin. Ah, a troubadour's dirk, the merchant states. Nice choice. That'll be 87 gold farlex. Cool, I'll take it, the new bard remarks. So he pulls out his coin purse, takes one of the shiny silver coins out, and hands it to the weapons merchant. He takes the change and returns it to the coin purse that Code had given him earlier. That was a lot to spend at the first shop, he thinks to himself. Then he argues with himself aloud. But a weapon is one of the most crucial tools. As he exits the shop, he turns and faces the armor shop. Next up, threads, he states, rubbing his hands together. Then he walks over to the shop and goes through the front entrance. Much like he did in the first shop, he eyes all the exquisite choices on display. He takes out his monocle and sets his preferences, then begins scanning the store. While he finds a lot of excellent armor, he realizes that he doesn't have the ability to wear the mail and plate armor, leaving his options limited to either cloth or leather armor. So he looks around until he finds a mixture of nice leather and cloth items. Eventually, he chooses this sturdy leather chest piece with dark blue cloth emblems on it, similar leggings, and a cloth cape with a shawl, in case of wet weather. He also picks up a small leather satchel to carry extra items in, and as he's making the purchase, a pair of fingerless gloves catches his eyes. They are cloth, but they have blue leather strips around the knuckles. I'll take those too, he says with sparkling eyes. Then he hears a familiar voice. You about ready, Gray? He turns to find Killswitch, Gray shouts. What do you think? He asks, showing off his new gear. Looking good, Gray, looking good, Killswitch praises. Then he prods, ready to get it dirty? Can't wait, Gray replies confidently. Did you go through any combat tutorials? Kill asks. About that, Graelic answers hesitantly. No matter now, Killswitch responds. Then turning around, he continues. The next run is starting in about 5 minutes. Follow me this way. He instantly takes off, running down the crowded street past all the shops. Immediately, Graelic starts sprinting hot on his heels. As they run, Killswitch begins explaining the basics of combat. Okay, so basically there are two main forms of fighting in this world, casting and melee. Some adventurers only use melee and can do a lot of physical damage. These fighters generally have a ton of strength and stamina, or high dexterity and agility. They will be hard to catch if they're in the latter category, and take a lot of hits if they're in the former. On the opposite end of the spectrum, other fighters depend almost solely on casting magic. These fighters are not physically capable of all that much, aside from running for long periods of time. However, if they hit their target, it may very well be burned alive or frozen solid. You, however, he pauses his explanation for a second as he scales an alley wall and flips down to the street on the other side, then continues. You are a hybrid fighter. You can do both fairly well. Without warning, he stops abruptly and looks at Gray. In your belt satchel, you should have a small scroll. What does it say? Graelic reaches in and pulls out the small scroll. As he opens it, he reads the phrase written thereon. Whispers of wind in the dead of night lend strength and serenity of the pale moonlight. Right, Killswitch states. That's your first enchantment spell to increase your magic stats. It's a self buff, meaning it's just for you. You can't share it with anyone else, unfortunately. But that's just the phrase. To cast the spell, you also have to perform certain synchronized motions with your hands, and timing is key. Demonstrating, he shows him some simple movements. First, you start with your hands at your sides. Then, raise your hands towards your lips in this shape, like to motion silence with your fingers in front of your lips. The finger should hit your lips when you say whispers. Then roll your hand out away from your mouth to signify wind, moving like this. Next, fold your arms together with the palms facing towards each other, with your left hand near your right elbow and vice versa. This motion represents death, or something laying in peace. Follow this up by raising both hands up to about face height, fingers pointing up towards the sky or night sky. After this part, cross your arms and flex, indicating strength, and follow that gesture by rolling your right hand up and touching your index finger to your forehead, where a person's third eye would be. This is indicative of serenity or peace of mind. Finally, to imitate the moonlight, raise your right hand up towards the moon or sky. All that being said, it basically means that the efficiency of your spellcast is based off of three factors: the rhythm and intonation of your chant, the proper motion required, and finally, synchronization of the two. If you perform the required motion for the spell exactly as required, and perfectly synchronize each gesture with the required words in the phrase as you correctly chant the spell, you will cast a critical effect spell. Practice your glyphing and your chanting techniques as much as possible, and you will improve. In the case of this spell, your Wind of Clarity, you'll get an additional 10% wisdom, which will increase your mana pool as well as your mana recovery rate. Yeah, well, Killswitch, this all seems kind of complicated and a little boring, Graelic interjects. Killswitch rolls his eyes. I get it, Gray. I really do. This is the basic tutorial bit, and it's definitely a little dry. However, it gets much more involved very quickly. So, moving on from this little lesson, you know the basics of how to cast your spells. There are several ways to learn and improve new spells, but you can get to that later. For now, I have a few more scrolls to get you set for this first run. After giving this thorough explanation, Killswitch reaches into his own satchel, pulls out a few small scrolls, and holds them out towards Graelic. Sweet! Graelic exclaims. Then he gives a fist bump and says, Thanks, dude! Suddenly, Killswitch turns and starts running once again. Then he looks back and shouts, Keep up, Gray! It's go time! Gray takes off right after him, and as he reaches him, he asks, So this is the way to the first battle? Killswitch nods yes with a big smile. That's right, man. By the way, you should start working on those other spells as soon as we reach the rest of the group. Facing forward once more, he suggests, those other spells will certainly benefit the rest of us.